Hello, it's Robert here, fact checker and science blogger, and this time it's just about some very good news that will help some of you who get scared about climate change. And in fact, there was a story just now shared in the group where someone claimed that all the fish will be gone in so many years or something. That's not true at all. Now, this is very positive news that these countries, the 14 different countries, Canada, Mexico, Portugal, Norway, Jamaica, Chile, Namibia, Ghana, Kenya, Indonesia, Australia, Japan, Palau, Fiji, and Norway. I don't know if I've said them all, but these countries and Chile, they are all going to, they have made the pledge so that by 2030 they will be managing the area of the ocean that is in their territory 100% sustainably, and they will set aside nearly a third, 30% of their territory, of their sea territory, to be protected, completely protected. And this actually makes sense in terms of if you want maximising your fish. It actually makes sense to protect large areas of the ocean, because then that's where the fish is safe, and then they could grow and they proliferate there and they spread out to other places. It actually makes sense. The whole thing makes sense in terms of maximising the amount of fish you get, actually. And then the managing sustainably, the thing is that at the moment, if you have all the fishermen competing to try and get as much catch as possible, they're competing with each other, and that reduces the populations to be very low. And if you can get rid of that competition, make it less competitive, then you can get 6 times as much fish from the same area of the ocean. And so they expect their fish catches to go way up as a result of measures to make sure that the fishermen are more cooperative in how they fish. And as a result of these big conservation areas, protected areas, large protected areas, where, for instance, the fish can spawn, and then their young can grow up safely. So it all just makes sense. It doesn't. The way we're doing it at the moment doesn't make sense. And so they are inviting other countries to join them, and they started off with these 14 countries. It doesn't include the United States. It doesn't include most of Europe. And the reason is because when you start involving someone like France or United States, then your discussions tend to become very complicated. They have lots of requirements and things they want to do. They've got so many ramifications of all their decisions. It's quite difficult for them to make quick decisions. But these other countries are more nimble and more flexible. And already they want to do this. So they have done this. Now, Biden in the United States, then he also wants to join in the 30% protected by 2030. So that's a separate thing from this particular agreement, which is just one of the things that they agree on. They also agreed with 100% sustainable, and so Biden in the United States, he may well join this, who knows, or do something parallel that's similar. And then other countries, they're expecting other countries to join in, so this is just a start. Don't feel that the ones that are not included are not doing anything, because they will be doing things, or that they're not going to join this, because they may well join it once they've got through and worked through their own processes. So that's very good news. And then the other thing that people think, oh, we're just not going to have enough fish to feed people. And later on this century, you get people saying things like that. Now, actually, there was a significant risk of that, but it's been solved by fish farming. So that is on land. Then nearly all the meat we have is farmed. There's some areas where there's wild caught meat that is part of the diet, but we would not be able to feed this number of meat eaters on land with just wild-caught meat, wild-caught animals. But we have been trying to feed everyone with fish using wild-caught fish. And that became gradually unsustainable. So what happened is that we did much as we've done on land, but this we've only done in the sea for the last century or so, gradually doing more and more farming or fish farming in the sea. And it has reached the point where sometime around now, 2020, the FAO project that half the fish eaten is from fish farms. And this is going to increase to about 60% by 2030. So this whole idea that we're not going to be able to have fish anymore, it's not true. In the future, then more and more fish farming is going to go on. It's going to be happening. There are also things like the giant kelp seaweed farms. Seaweed farming is something that was traditional in China and South Korea, and it's now gradually spread all over the world, places like Norway and the United States. And this, you can even do this in the deep sea. It doesn't need to be in the coastal regions. And you hang seaweed from strands hanging from the surface. And then you, this has potential to take a lot of carbon dioxide out of the seawater, not out of the atmosphere, but out of the seawater, and then the seawater takes it out from the atmosphere. So it reduces the acidity of the oceans. And it also, when you've got fertilizer runoff, then it can take the fertilizer out of the oceans as well. And also, if you have it down water of a fish farm, the fish farm produces contamination. It produces more organics from the fish, from both their feed and they're eating their feces. And the seawater it's got more organics. It's a bit richer near to a fish farm, and again. And the giant kelp seaweed farming and other forms of seaweed farming helps with that. So all that is going on as well. And so that's about protecting the oceans. And then these are large areas protected already in many different countries. The United Kingdom has large areas of protected ocean already. And so that's that. Quotes from the signatories, and the FAO, that's about how the FAO projects that by 2030 over 60% of the fish we eat will be farmed. So I'm just checking the time. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, that's from the giant kelp seaweed farming. Where have I put the Leaders' Pledge? I don't seem to have added the Leaders' Pledge, so I will add that to my answer. I'll just bring that up. So this is Leaders' Pledge to stop and reverse destruction of biodiversity by 2030 and make this part of the COVID-19 recovery. And that's leaders of 71 nations, including Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel, Prince Charles and Boris Johnson. So Prince Charles joined in. I mean, he's obviously not a leader, but he also made the pledge. And so they are going to follow the key points from the IPBES recommendation in 2019, and they need to change the fossil fuels energy incentives. Instead of subsidising fossil fuels, they subsidise renewables and subsidise and so use incentives to promote an integrated approach with sustainability, and subsidise the incentives that are beneficial to biodiversity instead of ones that are harmful to nature. And it's quite difficult to do that because of vested interests that are used to the old subsidies, and they're going to go against that. And it's a bit easier when you're recovering from many business going out of work and so on, if you're creating new jobs from scratch, then you can decide to do it in a way that encourages the fossil fuels approach or that encourages renewables and biodiversity. And these 71 leaders have said they're going to go the other way and promote an integrated approach with sustainability. So, and then there's going to be the summit, and that's in 2021. There's going to be a summit about this. And the green recovery is also happening in many countries. And the thing is that it works economically, that you get a much more robust recovery if you do the recovery in such a way that you have to stimulate jobs to recover from an economy, recovery from something like the pandemic. And the best way to stimulate it is to create jobs. I mean, you could stimulate the economy by just getting them to make lots of follies or something. You just make anything, and something absolutely useless, but you're employing lots of people to do it. But and you could stimulate by getting them to do more of the fossil fuel or whatever things we're already doing. But if you stimulate it with the renewables and with preserving biodiversity and sustainability, then these have a very long-term positive effect. You're stimulating, employing lots of people to build something into your economy and insulation of the houses and things like that. That's of great long-term value. And that is a multiplier effect on the economy. It means for the same amount of finance, we're stimulating jobs. You're not just stimulating now, but you're stimulating a robust future. And things like, if you stimulate renewables, then in the future the United States spends billions of dollars a year protecting its oil supplies. If it can transition to renewables, then it saves all that. So there are all sorts of benefits from stimulating, if you can stimulate it in one of these ways. The renewables, then with the renewables, then what happens is that it takes an awful lot of work to make a renewable, like a solar plant, a solar photovoltaic power plant. And then once it's done, then it's just there, and it needs very little by way of maintenance for the next 20, 30 years or whatever. So you've put a lot of work into building this thing, and then the people who were employed in that, then they can go off and they can start, they now have the skills, and they can be involved in, for instance, in putting solar panels in people's roofs and other renewable activities. So this has a multiplier effect because you've created something of lasting value. You've made your solar photovoltaic power plant. It is then a constant benefit for your economy, and you've got these people who have been trained as well, and who've got the experience. It's a win-win-win thing, and so many countries are doing that. It just makes sense, even if they're not particularly renewable orientated. Then it just makes economic sense to do this. And the same with preserving biodiversity, preserving nature services. Then if you put your stimulus into that, then that is a positive outcome for your country, and it's a much more robust recovery. So that is going on. That's actually happening. It's not theoretical. There are 7 countries already, examples there of 7 countries who are doing it, repairing nature, using the stimulus to repair nature in order to come back as a much stronger economy. And just like with the seafloor, it just makes this thing where just like that makes sense, and so does that. So does in other ways. So this is a simple example, like I explained there, that by protecting the 30% and by sustainable fishing, they actually increase the yield on the fish from the sea. And so you can do that on the land as well. And so that is what many countries are doing, and if you can put your stimulus for the recovery into that, then you have much better recovery. It's faster and it's more stable, and when you recover, you've got more jobs, you've got more GDP, you've got a much more robust economy. And so many countries are doing that. So I see this as very, very positive, lots of positive stuff going on. And so I'm sharing this to help some of you who've been cast in doom and gloom. You need to watch out for the journalists. They just bad news sells, and so there's an awful lot of them just saying it because it's and then leaving out the positive stuff, because if they make it seem very, very gloomy, they get lots of clicks and views, and then you get people saying, oh, your journalism was absolutely wonderful, you really hit the nail with all the negative stuff that's going on, you managed to uncover all sorts of stuff. And then if you do something that's kind of positive, says everything's looking good, and there actually is a lot of positive things going on, then it doesn't really work so well as journalism. You get less clicked and shared. You don't get people praising you for your positive journalistic article. So there's a kind of perverse incentive to journalists to play up the negative. So you need to kind of watch out for that. And you also have the activist mentality that if we make things seem really bad, then they think that in that situation, if you make things seem even worse and worse and worse, and say everything's going to be hopeless by 2030, and no one will compete and say, actually by 2025, the world is going to be uninhabitable, it's going to be too hot for humans, and there's nothing that we can eat, and then they'll say 2023 or whatever. And the more you do that, they sort of seem to think that the more you do that, the more people will act. But it doesn't work like that. You will stimulate other activists, but most people don't have an activist mentality. And most people, if you say nobody's doing anything and we've got an absolute emergency and there's nobody doing anything at all, and we've just had it, and unless we do something very sudden, very drastic in the next 3 years, then most people will say, well, that's hopeless then, nobody's doing anything, and they'll just get despair and suicidal and scared, and they'll stop having children because they don't want their children to live up and grow up into this world. And it's so sad because it's just not true. It's just activists who think that's the way to get people to act. It's not reality. In reality, an awful lot of positive is going on. And this is what I mean by positive framing. So activists do negative framing, and they try and make things look very, very, very negative. Positive framing is not the same as positive spin. In fact, they do negative spin on top of negative framing. Negative framing and then negative spin to make it seem even worse than it really is. And so, but positive framing, you can do positive framing without any positive spin. I haven't exaggerated anything here. I just straightforwardly presented it exactly as it is. And there's lots of positive going on, and we have a huge amount to do, but we are rising to it. And this means, this encourages, all of us can be encouraged by this, that in our own lives, we can do many things we can do in our lives. It's not pointless to do things like recycling to get more efficient appliances, buy the most efficient appliances for your home, to be careful about food waste, and to try to transition to be either a climate carnivore that is more careful about what kind of meat you eat, or to reduce and have 1 day a week without meat. That has a big positive effect as well. And there are many things you can do in your life to help. And if we're all in it together, the governments and the companies and the individuals, and we're all in it together, then it greatly makes it much easier to achieve our goals. And so this is an example where we actually have leadership for many countries in the government level who are involved in this, and we should all be involved in this in whatever way we can. We all can be anyway, if we so wish. I'm not saying that everyone, it's not a prescription, not saying everyone's got to do this, but the more people we have behind this, then the more that we're actually going to be leaving a much better world to future generations. So, what's the word? Well, I do this fact checking for anyone, but particularly for people in our Doomsday Debunk group in Facebook. And if any of you are good at fact-checking, and proper fact-checking, you're not exaggerating, just looking at things plainly and carefully, and in whatever area of expertise, and very welcome in the group to help. We help the people who got scared by all those activist things, and sometimes terrified and sometimes suicidal. And so perhaps if you want to come and help and try to help reassure these people, and then do it just in a realistic way, not sugarcoating, not positive spin, just saying how things are. And that's what we do. So that's what we do. And if you're scared, then you could find people there that can help you as well. So, and also if you're good at talking to people who are scared and suicidal, even if you're not that good at aren't either expert or aren't especially used to fact checking, but if you're just very good at human way, helping people, reassuring people who are scared, then we have a lot of very scared people in the group. They're generally getting help from therapists. We don't offer therapy, but they can certainly do with a lot of reassurance from other people as well. And things like advice, help how to find a good therapist, or things like that, anything like that. I very welcome anyone who can help out in our group in any way.